Yeah. Yeah. So everybody, please don't write on this, okay, so I can use it again. So I can recycle this. And do your answers on a separate sheet of paper. The key is in the back, so grade your own. And one thing about the AP exam. So I have 55 multiple choice on the AP exam. And if you get about 60% correct or more, you've done well. It's not a 90, 80, 70, 60. That's not the way they grade it. And I can't guarantee it, but it's approximately about 60%. And so if you get 70%, you've done really well. 80%, you've done great. So don't worry if you miss a few. Hey, it's going to happen. You might misread one. There's always going to be one you don't know, or you start getting a little flustered on it. Things happen. Don't worry. You miss a few, you've done well. You get over 60%, you're okay. So that's really important to understand. They don't grade these like we get the grade in we have in class. They come up with a score, so they have a formula for the multiple choice, the essays. They put their number correct in a formula, they add it all together, and then they grade on a curve. All standardized tests are graded on a curve. They have an approximate percentage where they figure out this number and it kind of shifts, they adjust it, how many are going to pass. So for years, they only let about 50%, approximately 50% of people pass the AP history. They've gone up a little bit. As a class, as a school, capital, grade US history has always done a lot better than the average. But they narrow it down. And so it's curving. Just do the best you can. Don't freak out if you miss one or two, or three or four. Just do the best you can. And hopefully, when you go back and look at them, you can say, for a lot of them, oh, I should have gotten it. I should have gotten it. Whatever. These have a stimulus, it goes up to 1865. It's a good practice. So by Tuesday, I'll give you part B of this, do it on the same sheet of paper, and then when we're all done, I'll give you a little credit for doing it. Next week on DBQs, I have almost all of them graded, so hopefully one. But I still got a few. I had a lot of people gone. And so back to this. Thursday, school day. And what we're doing Thursday in class, and I'll sign, or you have to do it if you're not in class on Thursday, is we're doing a practice test. Who has done an assignment on AP Classroom? Raise your hand if you've done something in AP Classroom. Who has signed up for AP Classroom? You've signed up, you've done that. Everyone should have done that. I signed out a long time ago. So as long as you have that path where you should get into it, I put it already an assignment out there. It's not due. Just a big bunch of practice, multiple choice, and practice questions. Not an assignment I'm going to grade. You can go ahead. I want everyone though to check to see if you get that assignment. And you can do it anytime you want. It's supposed to be graded immediately, so you can see how you do it. Just practice, just for you if you want sample questions. Everyone got that? But on Thursday, you're doing a 55 question multiple choice practice. Do it in class, or you have to do it before Monday. Hear that, right? On the computer, and it's practice, but I'll give you points for it. And I have it set up so it should take about 50 minutes. That's how much time you have to do 55 questions on the AP exam. And it'll be graded so you can go back and look at it. But as long as you finish, I'll give you some points. And we'll do the same thing probably next. We'll do it once or twice next week. Do another one in class. Good on that? If you have trouble signing an AP Classroom and seeing that kind of practice assignment I made, please let me know Monday or Tuesday. We'll quick look at it. So please, everybody, sometime in the next 4 days or so, check AP Classroom. All right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Does anyone have the article on the atomic bomb? The dropping of the atomic bomb. If you read this, it should have helped you a lot. Remember this article? If you have it, please give it to me so I can recycle them and use them again. If you didn't use them, that's on you, because they would have helped. I think they would have helped immensely. I mean, they told you the big elements. If you're going to talk about Japan going to surrender, you had to mention the emperor, stuff like that. All right, bring it up. Turn them up, please. All the way back. If you don't have it today, please bring it so I can recycle them and use them again and save paper, because I'm a good, responsible person. Thank you. You don't have them, please bring them in. Either take the blame or find the scapegoat. Roman. All the mortgage, right? All right. We have a little bit of an assignment out of the review book, but this one just, I mean, it's just, multiple choice questions tomorrow. Half of you be done with each question in like 30 seconds. You know how it is. There'll be a few you have trouble with. All right, so take your notes out. Where do we finish here? Thank you, my good friend. What are we at? Liberation Day, yeah, Bretton Woods. And oh, you're kidding me. I noticed I took that up third period. A bunch of people were pointing at the document, but the bell rings. They didn't tell me. Third period. What do you expect? Did you have the bear in the? All right. So we got the Bretton Woods. We're right. This look right? Yeah. All right. So that would be the end of the post-war world. I don't know what's going to come out of it, and it might not be too much of a shock, but it's going to be different. Things are different now. Be ready. So, post-war then, what else was going on? First off, right before the end of the war, President Roosevelt would push through an initiative called the GI Bill over conservative opposition, both Republican and conservative Democrat opposition, because this goes against trivial economics, and it will go to people regardless of color of skin. And the GI Bill would provide tuition and other money for veterans. You probably already know about the GI Bill, and a lot of you probably know about it. It is aid for tuition and also aid living expenses if you're a veteran. And now it's been expanded to include children of veterans to get a little bit of tuition in, and also aid for housing. This is a massive benefit for joining the military. But when you have 15 million men and women in the armed forces total during the war, that is a huge block of people who have now access to college. They never would have had a chance before, ever. So Roosevelt wanted tuition, publicly funded tuition for all public schools, but at least he got that. But it would be over conservative opposition. What's GI stand for? GI Joe would be a slang for soldier, and GI means government issue. You're in order. So GI is a soldier. So, but there would be a post-war depression, and the depression was bad, but not near as bad as after World War I. The Roosevelt administration did much better with the Office of Price Administration to keep that from happening. And let me check one quick. Bill passed. If it's not up, come and tell me if not. All right. It was not near as bad. And it's going to be a couple years to go from being, making tanks to making cars again. But the United States seemed like, it felt like to everybody, it was on the edge of an economic boom. This story was like a colossus astride the planet. It was going to have such a powerful economy. And after years of depression and war, people were ready for this new outlook. But the Republicans that I mentioned once before, swept the 46 midterms. It wasn't so much a pro-Republican vote as this happens a lot. People who don't really pay attention to politics were like, oh, we've had Democrats for long. Let's try to go back. And the most important law they would pass would be the Taft-Hartley. So conservative Republicans despised the New Deal. They despised Social Security. They despised the minimum wage. They despised the 40-hour work week. They despised child labor laws. Remember, conservative economics funnel money into the hands of the wealthy, partially by lowering wages. So the Taft-Hartley was a way to try to, the first attack would be against unions. And it would be an anti-union vote. Very anti-union. The best known, it banned sit-down strikes. It's still the law of the land today. The most effective weapon for unions during the 30s and early 40s. Truman vetoed it, but a combination of conservative Republicans and Southern conservative Democrats who were anti-union, especially because blacks could join it, voted it down. And this would begin the erosion of unions. So union membership would still remain over 30% by the 1970s, but in the 1980s, union membership went into free fall. Absolute free fall. I should add that's also when the gap between the rich and the poor began to grow exponentially. Ronald Reagan was a very conservative president, and he was rabidly anti-union. He despised labor unions. And that would begin the end of labor unions in the United States. And let me add one thing. There's a lot of talk today, especially about the Trump administration, thinking that we'll bring back factories and manufacturing to the United States, which we have an issue with that. But they sell to people by saying those are good paying jobs. Well, the reason why manufacturing jobs were good paying was because in the 50s and 60s, we had a third of all workers in the labor union, and that pushed up wages. We don't have the unions now. So those jobs would not be near as high. Okay, and I should add one more thing. They're hard jobs. That's real work being in the factory. So back to this. So Truman looks in real trouble. That's him giving the State of the Union address after the war. The election of 1948, the Democrats look in trouble. The Republicans figure we got it. The Democrats are kind of stuck with Truman. And Truman did a smart thing. People loved FDR outside of the very wealthy. So he'll finish the New Deal by calling his program the Fair Deal. So remember, Teddy Roosevelt, the Square Deal. Franklin Roosevelt, New Deal, now the Fair Deal. This is the last of the deals. The liberal president, John Kennedy, would have the New Frontier. That would be his New Deal-like program. Lyndon Johnson would have the Great Society. And the Democrats kind of started doing interesting things. So, the education, remember FDR wanted free tuition, or wanted public tuition to be paid for by taxpayers for free tuition for students? That's what Truman announced. So basically like the GI Bill, but for everybody. And this included other kind of like technical schools, everything. And if public schools, state universities, if their tuition is taxpayer funded, what will that do to the tuition of private schools? Drop them, because private schools will have to compete with schools with low tuition. Back when I was in school, tuition was significantly lower. So private schools' tuition was significantly lower. Now, public education, because they quit funding it, 80s and 90s, big cuts in public education. Wait till you see this next. Wait till you see next year. But tuition went up, and what happened to private schools? Skyrocketed. I believe, Carol, the tuition now is between $3 and $4 million. Okay, that's what we call hyperbole, exaggeration. But as you know, it is really expensive. What is it for credit? It's for everything. Yeah, so I think for that's just tuition. And so I think per credit is like $3,000. And that's not counting living expenses. You have to eat and stuff while you go to school. I don't know if you know that. Back to this. He wanted a national healthcare insurance. So not like the British national healthcare system or the VA, where it would be the entire system controlled by for the people by taxpayer money. This is just the insurance. So hospitals would still be, kind of quasi-private and public. So this, we run through Social Security. The closest I could say would be kind of like what France, Germany, Japan, or closer to home Canada. What they have. Everyone has health insurance, but the hospitals are private. Yeah. And using the power nap drops costs down. So national healthcare insurance. Remember, Roosevelt wanted this too. This is the first time, healthcare began to work. And therefore, hospital became very expensive. Did we get this? We don't have national health insurance. The United States is the only industrialized country that does not have this. And so we pay over twice the average of other countries, and our outcomes are the worst. We have the lowest, the lowest life expectancy and the highest infant mortality of any industrialized power. And we pay twice as much. That Costa Rica is significantly better. Panama is better, and they're not necessarily incredibly wealthy country. And civil rights. And right down the military, here are these Southerners who want to get rid of, what are the laws that segregated the South? Do you remember? Jim Crow. He got rid by executive order. Truman signed an executive order to get rid of segregation in the military. No more segregated units. And I should add, the United States military is the most integrated body in the entire United States because of this. The less prejudice based upon color or skin, or for that matter, sex. There's nothing that compares to the military because they ordered it. And so that is the fair deal. And you see that wipes out segregation in the armed forces. This is a Southern Democrat. And the reason Southerners wanted him on as Roosevelt's vice president because he would be for Jim Crow. So Truman was a pretty interesting guy. And Southern Democrats walked out. And why did they walk out? There they are walking out. They just left. Remember 1860. And why did they leave? Southern Democrats left. They split over civil rights. I kind of was repetition there. So just put the Southern Democrats left over civil rights. They walked out and had their own convention. This should sound familiar. They did the same thing in 1860. States' rights. They called themselves the States' Rights Party. And states' rights became code for segregation. But everyone called them the Dixiecrats. You might remember the term Dixiecrats. Those were the former Confederates who took over the South right after Reconstruction. They would pick Strom Thurmond to run as the states' rights Southern Democratic Party presidential candidate. 1860, the Democrats split over slavery, and that allowed Lincoln to be elected. So the Republicans are looking at this thinking, we got it made. We don't have a chance. We got it made. The Republicans are split. Remember 1912. The Republicans split between Roosevelt and Taft, so the Democrats won. And you might also notice there's Strom Thurmond, states' rights. They dusted off the Confederate battle flag. Remember, the Confederate battle flag was a symbol of the lost cause after the Civil War. Now the Confederate battle flag became the symbol of states' rights, which became this, which of course everyone knew was segregation. And so there would be marches and protests for rights. Counter protesters would all be waving Confederate battle flags. It became a symbol of state Jim Crow. Just as states' rights before the Civil War meant pro-slavery. The party thought that party would just be one election. Yeah. But almost certainly there has to be people who wave the Confederate battle flag. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And by 1960, if you're waving that flag, you're letting everyone know. And there might be people today that might be ignorant of that fact, but that's still what it is. And I'll know ignorance is an offense. And Strom Thurmond would be governor of South Carolina. Remember, South Carolina started the Civil War. Kind of makes sense, yeah. Why would this happen so many times? Like, they know they're not going. Is it just like how it's partial? So mad, but there's something else too. They would rather have a Republican not report, not pushing civil rights. So they would rather have the other party. And a lot of them conservative didn't like the New Deal, so they didn't like the very deal. They did. This Strom Thurmond did not want to lock them in. So let me give you a quotation from Strom Thurmond. Just read it. They don't hide what they're talking about. That's what he said in 48. Now, when he said Negro, that was kind of emphasizing his Southern accent. He's saying the word Negro. And Negro was used a lot as a polite way to say black. In fact, it was a big deal in the 1960s for for blacks to say we're not, to get rid of that term Negro and say we're blacks, we're black. But there's nothing wrong with being black. It's just the color of skin. There's nothing wrong. In fact, they would say black is beautiful. Remember, black became like symbol of color of like negative, dark colored skin. But there's something else too. By saying that, it was a way for him to really emphasize the accent and say Negro. So I think you know what that word that was pretty close to. You know what I mean? So it was a way to say it without actually saying it. Which of course was the term for somebody who was a slave, did not go to the place. This is the most difficult to deal with as a massive insult. Yeah. So back to this. Oh, you see him carrying the fire property lead, right? Strom Thurmond would later be elected to the Senate, and he would serve into the Senate until 2001. He would be in there till he was 101 years old. Strom Thurmond. One more thing about Strom Thurmond, I'll add. He is going to become the best known Democrat. He was Democrat. There's only Democrats in the South then. He would be the first major Democrat to switch parties. He would become a Republican in 62. As the Republicans begin to shift to anti-civil rights. He would be the first. It would turn into a wave by the 1970s. Republicans in the South Democrats in the South becoming Republicans. So, and then the Democrats split one more time. Remember the Progressive Party of the Bull Moose Teddy Roosevelt? Well, they would nominate the vice president that Truman replaced, Henry Wallace. And he wanted more liberal economics, more Keynesian economics. He had more involved with the left, so he had ties with the socialists. He also thought the Truman Doctrine was going to blow the world up and wanted better relations with the Soviets. And that's actually not necessary. That's a good thing because we almost had World War III many times. But he also made the mistake of saying Stalin really wasn't that bad of a guy. No, Stalin was that bad. But this shows the Democrats, and he's trying to plow or hold a straight line. And here we have Wallace and Thurmond trying to push either direction, meaning the Democrats were split three ways. The Republicans are thinking, we just nominate a sentient being. Heck, we just nominate somebody who looks like a guy. In fact, that's what they did. They nominated a guy who people would call the little man on the wedding cake. That's what they called him. Thomas Dewey. And that's Dewey right there. And everyone said, the little man on the wedding cake. That's him smiling. He never smiled. And he was a liberal Republican. Conservative anti-New Dealers were mad because he was relatively pro-New Deal. He lost in 44 to Roosevelt, but now he's got to win. And he ran a non-campaign. Here he is, Dewey, our next president, not say anything, not screw up, I'll be elected. And he came to fame as a district attorney in New York City. He would bring some of the most infamous organized crime figures to justice, like Lucky Luciano or Murder Incorporated, or the members of the Five family, the Giovizzi family. We literally just talked about him in special topics, because we did 20 gangsters. And the first real polling was done, our agency by named Gallup. And this is a cartoon showing all the polls. The last poll would be a couple weeks before the election. Had Dewey winning landslides. Everybody thought Dewey would win. Everybody. Dewey just has to show up. The only person who thought Truman could win was Truman. He understood the popularity of the New Deal and that people didn't want to go back to the 1920s, which everybody talked about, the trickle-down economics that led to the Great Depression. So he did the last of these campaigns of early 20th century before television. before screens would come to dominate today, which is what it is today, PV, and now it's any screen. He did a whistle stop in the back of his train, the Ferdinand Magellan, all over the United States. That's him in Montana. And he gave a speech. He wasn't good at like giving a set speech, but he could give one of those kind of rip-roaring talks. And he would talk about the malefactors of wealth, wealthy evildoers who want to come back and get all the money again and do all those financial shenanigans that led to the revolution or that led to the depression. They want to get rid of your Social Security, get rid of the 40-hour work, get rid of everything we fought for so they can get rich. And he would just get everyone all fired back to go back to the farm programs where all the farmers were going broke. And somebody would yell out in the crowd every time it became a thing. They would say, "Give him hell, Harry." And he said, "If you send me back, I'll do it." They all would cheer. I mean, these speeches must have been really cool. There's hardly any recordings of them. Now, he gave a set speech. He sounded awkward and stilted. But when the election finally happened, it's considered one of the greatest political upsets in history. Truman didn't just win. He won a big victory. And you'll notice Montana, for example, went for Truman. Montana was a different state. Montana was dominated by union members, miners, and small farmers who were Democrats. That's not Montana today. Montana is a much different state. But you also notice one other big thing. Look at these states that went from. Republicans will notice 1860 are going. We can get those Southern Democrats. They'll have a name for it. It's called the Southern Strategy. It's coming. So, the Chicago Tribune was a Republican. The owner was Republican, and they wanted the newspaper out, the first major newspaper out with Dewey winning. So they printed over 4 million copies of this paper that said Dewey defeats Truman. And so it got to Truman the next day, and at the celebration for his victory, I mean, you could feel me just so excited. Yeah, I stuck it in your face. Remember that somebody wanted to look tough. But now the Republicans, Dewey didn't do red bait, attacking Democrats for being communists. Now the Republicans are going to go on the attack. And they're going to accuse anything that the Democrats do and saying they're soft on violence. And they'll get a couple big things that happen. Yeah.
You know what happened? There was an episode. The brought to the sort of participation.
Yeah, you can see it. Now, it wouldn't happen in the 50s. You wouldn't really see it all through the 50s. It would still be, for the most part, solid stuff. But it would be Republican strategists looking back and saying, that's it. Because Republicans were still generally kind of pro-civil rights, party like that would tell the switches. But so Thurman would be like the key. And then once he switched parties, they like open the door, we can all switch. So, 2 shocks would happen in 1949 that would shape the United States to this day. And that would spell the end of the fair deal. Because of these 2 shocks, Southern Democrats and Republicans could unify and stop all 3 of the big initiatives. Health insurance, the big thing was integrated hospitals. That almost happened. That almost happened. It's one of the great what ifs. Who knows? There's good things and bad things about those kind of universal healthcare systems, but the outcomes are better than here. I love this. The bear grow. That just makes me laugh. So, what are the 2 shocks? The first one, the United States codenamed it Joe 1. Anybody know what it was? There's a hint there. The Soviets exploded their first atomic bomb. It's the exact replica of Trinity. There's the Soviet physicist. That's an almond. I mispronounced Russian. I'm sorry. But it's the Trinity bomb. And all of a sudden now, the US is a threat. And immediately overnight, the thinking was, oh gosh, Soviet bombers will be coming over the Arctic and raining nuclear hell. They would have said atomic hell on the United States. And the Soviets didn't build that many bombs, didn't have any bombers, but that's not the point. We had to work on, for example, now civil defense. Also, we got to teach people what to do in case of nuclear war. So, for example, little kids will be taught duck and cover. What's duck and cover? Nuclear war. What do? Hide under a desk. I was taught that first and third grade. I did duck and cover. And as we all know, these desks, they have legs. Can you notice that? So if there's a 10 megaton nuclear bomb in Helena Valley, we just get under the desk, we're fine. The point is, they wanted to make people think it's surviving. Make people believe they can survive. Actually, I guess we get under the desk. It'd be over fast, but we found out because we have been testing how much radiation is in the atmosphere from our explosions in the Pacific. Remember Bikini Atoll? We had these balloons that were going up to about 90 to 100,000 feet that were picking up radiation. To see what happened. We hadn't tested for a while, and one of these balloons picked up radiation. It want to be a solar. One more thing. In 1947, one of these balloons crashed. Top secret. We didn't want anyone to know what we were doing. Top secret balloon. You have a place called Roswell, New Mexico? Aliens! Nobody saw flying saucers. Then all of a sudden, flying saucer planes. If you're in a Roswell, that's where it comes from. At least that's what they want us to think. We know. There's a show called The X-Files that they do reruns all about it. But there's spies in Los Alamos. At the same time they did this, the United States had broken the Soviet wartime code. And it showed not only that the Soviets had the bomb, but it had a number of names, most importantly, a Bulgarian physicist by the name of Klaus Fuchs. Be careful spelling his name. Klaus Fuchs was a Bulgarian who fled fascism to Britain. Then Britain farmed him out to Los Alamos. He worked on the US bomb, and he was back in Britain working on the British bomb. The British would have a bomb in a year. France in a few years after that. Well, they told Britain, you got a spy. Britain was really embarrassed, arrested him. He admitted it. That's his mugshot. They did a trial that lasted like 2 hours. And he'd be tried for espionage for 20 years, or sentenced for 20 years. He's the worst type of spy. He was a committed communist who was convinced that fascism would overtake the weak democracy in Britain and the United States. So Stalin needed the bomb. Spies who are true believers are tough. Spies who do it for money are relatively easy. For three. They're easy to catch because they always spend the money, or you can turn, become counter agents because it's just for money. A lot of that's going to happen. So now there's real spies. This is the important thing. Remember the Truman Doctrine, the enemy, there might be the battles everywhere. Here's a real spy. Then another spy came out, Julius Rosenberg, and he and his wife Ethel are going to be arrested and accused of espionage. And in 1951, they're going to be condemned for espionage. That never happens in peacetime. Never. This shows you how crazy it got. Just madness over the Cold War and fear of communism. Not only were they condemned, Ethel, there's no indication that she had anything to do with the spy. She knew her husband was a spy. He was a spy. She probably wasn't a spy. She just knew. Yet they still electrocuted her. Which, if you know anything about electrocution, that's like torturing somebody. That should give you an idea how just crazy it got in this Red Scare. In the middle, something called McCarthyism. One more thing. Don't they look just like two middle-class people from that era? You know, like just normal people. Remember what I told you? Bored into your skull. Looked like everybody else. Sounded. Yeah. So, wouldn't that be anybody then? People got really scared overnight and started questioning everybody. And then this happened. Oh, that fear of an enemy within. Remember Total War? Then Red China. There was a civil war in China that had been going on since basically the emperor collapsed. So the teens of the 20th century. And the United States actually kind of supported both. But during the war, we basically supported a warlord who was a leader of what they called nationalist China named Chiang Kai-shek. And the leader of the communist revolt was Mao Zedong. There's Chiang, there's Mao. Chiang was a pretty corrupt generalissimo. He got rich off US aid, but Mao Zedong, it's a real deal. Communist fighter. And it happened really fast. Even though the nationalists outnumbered them, some estimates 10-1 in the number of soldiers, in October of 49, the communists just won in a rout. And in November, they took over the country. It happened, I mean, literally like that. Now, where did the nationalists go? They fled to the former Japanese colony of Formosa, which is today we call what? Taiwan. And that would become good China, the good guys. Even though Chiang Kai-shek was a brutal dictator until 1974 when he passed away. Taiwan now is a democratic republic, but it took a long time. And if you want to see something fun, watch the Taiwanese parliament. There's fist fights, throwing people and throwing chairs. It's kind of, I know this is a little bit wrong for me to say. It's kind of awesome. And I kind of wish I was in it. I'm still just barely young enough to at least act like I participate. I know you're all saying, no, you're old and decrepit, but let me act like I'm still young. And they got the UN seat. The United States did not recognize the largest country in the world as being a country. So the Security Council went to Taiwan. And it would be that way until 1979. And then we have Red China, AKA Bad China, the People's Republic of China. When I was a kid, it was Red China, Red China, Red China. It's kind of funny, you know, they started as communists, now they're kind of this corporate, fascist, authoritarian state. You know, there, China. Oof. But they're humiliating us right now. And they would not get a seat in the United Nations until 1979. So when the US finally allowed this to happen, the US shut down its embassy in Taipei and opened up the embassy in Beijing, and the United States does not recognize Taiwan as a country. Because the People's Republic of China would not allow it. Nobody recognizes it because they say they're part of China. And they have been making waves about invading Taiwan. And I think it's just threats because it'd be incredibly hard for them to invade crossing the Formosa Strait. And it might lead to a little thing called World War III and full-scale nuclear war, which I'm speaking for me personally, but I'm really speaking for you guys too. I don't want that. Yeah. What are we doing? Oh, wow. Wow, they're now, before it's just we didn't want to offend them, but now they're in economic politics. As we are finding out. You will find out in about a month. When all these shelves are empty. You will find out. I'm warning you. It's going to be bad. All right, so let's get to this. So the cry went out. Who lost China? And Americans are going to blame themselves, implying that like we're going to go to war for China. And now that's a big victory for Stalin. I should add they hated each other. And by 1969, China and the Soviet Union are actually going to full-scale combat on the Manchurian-Siberian border. So they don't like each other, they're rivals. But in Cold War thinking, Truman Doctrine, it's all being directed by Stalin. And who did Republicans blame? It must be Truman and the Democrats. And everybody after that, now we really got to look. Nobody wanted to be accused of losing another country. Remember, Truman made Greece important, and now we lost China, the most populous country in the world. What's the most populous country in the world today? No, India, by far. The Chinese population has actually dropped. The population growth has dropped like off the roof. The United States population growth is sliding. Taiwan is negative. So is South Korea and Japan, Germany. So right after this happened, the National Security Council, remember that was created in the National Security Act, they put memo number 68, meetings are 68. But this was a really important one. Because it said American policy, this is secret, but now we know about it. We must begin to massively build up the military. And so you can argue the Cold War arms race would begin right here. And they show that the US was just, they panicked. Total panic. It's no coincidence. We have Joe 1, spies, China. A revolution there could happen anywhere. Who lost it? Imbeciles in government or outright traitors. We better start building up weapons. Thermonuclear bombs are coming. And the House Un-American Activities Committee was originally created to stop fascists. But beginning with the Truman Doctrine, they started looking for communists. And this gave an excuse for Republicans to attack Democrats. And their main target, and that's one of the most famous actors. Yeah, this is Lauren Bacall, Humphrey Bogart, Betty White, Danny Kaye. They accused Hollywood of being a hotbed for anti-American, or anti-capitalist, pro-socialist, anti-values. They always do that. Hitler blamed them. And people blame the media today. It's like, come on, find something new to attack. And anybody accused would be blacklisted. They could never work again, including over 1,000 screenwriters, hundreds of directors, hundreds of actors could never work again. And you're going to get a lot of actors who they looked at this and said, I'll name any communist you want. I'll name anybody so I can continue to work. The most famous actor who would give names and accuse people who would be blacklisted, a guy named Ronald Reagan. He's coming. He's our future president. So, and then just 2.5 months after China, Joe McCarthy became a household name. It would become McCarthyism. And everybody make sure that's McCarthy. This is a book he had was ghostwritten. I've never actually read the book. I couldn't stomach it. But this is going to be attack Democrat. And they just begin to make accusations. Why? This is what we have to get down. Because people believe there must be spies there. And just imagine you're coming out of the World War II. There's more, there's more consumer goods. It's like the life is good. Like, oh my God, now there's spies everywhere. Chinese communists. We're losing. I want someone to get them. And McCarthy became that guy to get them. So we're going to watch a very short video clip. A couple things will happen. This will be known as McCarthyism. And it is going to be brutal. Brutal era. Just a few minutes of a video clip from this great series from the 1950s. So let us begin. This is McCarthy. They're blaming colleges for being hotbeds of communists. Today. Yalta, remember Yalta? He said there are communists at Yalta. There weren't, but remember that 1950s. He's in Wheeling, West Virginia. That's what we have to get. This right here. 205 communists. He just said 205 communists. Drinking buddies. So he just said 205, but people weren't ready to believe it. Then it hit the presses. Like, wow, McCarthy was a joke. And all of a sudden people knew who he was. And he realized, oh. Remember using the songs? And it is. This is funny. Hey, I guess we're winning. He's just making up numbers. Yeah, a piece of paper like this. Yeah, he lost it. And he held up a piece of paper. The piece of paper was actually a betting form for illegal horse track betting. He was drinking about a fifth of whiskey a day. Jeez. Yeah, when he died, his liver was 3 times the size of normal. He died at 57. And, okay, we have time to finish, but add one more thing to your notes. So all it was an accusation. He just started accusing people. He never found one true spot. He just accused Democrats, and Republicans supported him. And what happened to their career if they got an accusation? They're gone. Add one more thing. He kept doing it, though, when a Republican was elected president. He kept attacking the president. The president was a Republican, Eisenhower. And that would end his career. The Senate finally censored him as Democrat. But for 4 years, people were terrified of McCarthy. I'll tell you a little bit more about this on Monday. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness, we need to do a Flamingo Friday. We got to do it for you later. Drum roll, please. Oh my goodness. You only have 5 of these left. Yes. Thank you, Dan. That was close. Oh my goodness. Hey, remember you got the things out of the review book? Almost forgot. Everybody, pay attention. Pay attention up here. Intervention time on Monday. I will answer any question you have, especially on like pages 4 through 6 of that review book. I'll go through anything. You ask a question. So you have to come here to intervention time. If you don't come here, if you have a test, I understand it. If you want to screw around with your friends, well, that's on you. You still have to do, and you're still the ones that have to take the test. Take advantage of it. I go through everything. The intervention period after that, I will do page 11. You come, I'll do it. I'll do it for you.
Just to remind you, I never got
Yeah, Eric told me you. Yeah. So you got, I mean, sorry, you're gonna miss out. Oh. So, got some notes to do. Oh, that's solid, but people pay it. I'm probably happy.
For regular transport, I said for regular class, but I really want it to be a classroom.
I think I give you the online, you can choose the browse.
Are there specific assignments we're supposed to be doing?
Well, there's gonna be one, reviews. So what you're gonna have to do, I don't have that sheet. Come over here real quick. So I have to sign up. Are you're not taking the APs?
No, I'm not.
No problem. It's not that big of a deal. We're gonna practice test. I'll just give you credit.
Have a great weekend.
You too. And so it's really not that big of a deal. Don't. So go on the College Board website